Ralph Rayner flew B-24s against Japanese forces throughout the Pacific late in World War II. He deployed to Saipan, Guam, and Okinawa and fought through VJ Day. Join us to hear a valuable eyewitness account of flying liberators against Imperial Japan.
We were sent to Milwaukee for a short period of time, and civilian organization, civilian pilot. We got just a 20-minute flight. That was it, in an old clunker of an airplane. I had a paper route. And of course, the paper route put a special edition out that Sunday. It was Sunday. So I went up at Highland Park on the crossroads selling papers to cars that go by. Very exciting time. Then I saw what was happening, so I decided, I was in college at that time, Drake University in Des Moines. I decided that I should join up. So I went down and signed the papers and joined up. Said the issue, I hereby. And that was the summer of 1942, the war started. I went back to school, Drake University, for 6 months. And the guys were all gone. There were nothing but women. Des Moines, by the way, was the headquarters for the WACS, Women's Army Air Corps organization. So the campus at Drake was full of women, but no men. Then along comes December 1942, and I got given a ticket to Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis. That was the first stop. Spent 1 month down in Jefferson Barracks, getting uniforms and shots and all the things you started. And everybody got sick. We had the flu. And everybody in the place was coughing and miserable, and the food was awful. Then everybody got dispersed in various places. And then we went to Milwaukee, State Teachers College in Milwaukee for 1 month. And the time you spent there depended upon your grades and how you did up to that point. Some of the guys that had no experience with mathematics, they stayed longer. Some of the other guys didn't. I had 1 month in State Teachers College in Milwaukee. And then I was put on a train and 3 days to Los Angeles. And on the way, they'd feed us through the window. The people would come around with buckets of bushel baskets of sandwiches and hand them to you through the window. Why we were sent to Santa Ana, to a big Air Force base in lower California. And then we got lectures and we got all sorts of things. And the Catholic minister got up and said, nobody gets married. We can't put up with that. Nobody married. Then then the Protestant ministers came along and said, if you need any help with getting married, let us know. So the Army had its conflicts that way. Now our Army, we march and we strut and we put on good clothes and look sharp and for 1 month. And then we got dispensed in small groups to airfields. And we went to airfield, we went to Doss Palace. It was a little jerkwater joint in Upper California. And there we had the first experience in real flying. And we were taught by civilian instructors, not Army, civilian. Spent 4 weeks, learning how to fly a PT-21. And the PT-21 didn't have its, they had to twist the propeller to start the airplane. And then we had a lot of women, people working, truck drivers with the women to bring the gasoline to the airplane. And we had 35 hours in the air. It was wonderful. I loved every minute of that. After that, we were shipped down to Bakersfield, to Minter Field. Now, this is real Army now. The airplane we were going to fly there was the BT-13. Great big heavy airplane. Had everything you needed on it. It was great flying. There for 6 weeks or so. After the BT-13, they sent us down to Arizona to fly twin-engine trainer. I think that's called, I think it was 17. AT, Advanced Trainer 17, number 17. And we flew down there to, now we're twin engine, because we're going to be twin engine pilots. Wonderful, easy plane to fly. And I enjoyed that down in Arizona. Douglas Air Force Base, 1/2 mile from the Mexican border. One night we're doing training missions, and I'm in charge of the airplane, and I make a landing. And we had no lights. We had to make just little tiny lights on the runway so you could see the runway. And I'm coming down, and all of a sudden, I'm there. The plane's on the ground, and I don't even know it. Now that's one perfect landing. Graduated in March of 1944. Now, graduation meant you got your commission. You're now an officer, and they paid you a tremendous amount of money, $75 a month. And I got a 10-day leave. Came home to Des Moines, 10 days, with my future wife. Louise and I got married after the war. So we had 10-day leave, and then it was off to California. The reason for that was to be assigned then to a crew. We all flooded into California, San Francisco, and then you were assigned to a crew, a pilot, bombardier, navigator, and 6 enlisted men. Well, after assigning the crew, we ended up in Los Angeles for a short period of time, making flights in the B-24. The B-24 was a huge airplane, 4 engines roaring, and took me a while to get adjusted to it. The captain was called an air commander. He was 1 month ahead of me. By the way, that was an amazing thing, what the Army did. Everything was planned, right down to a T. The pilots were all 1 month ahead of us. So if I'd have been 1 month later, maybe I'd have been an air commander, who knows. But with that first flight, they sent an instructor along to sit where the co-pilot does, to be sure the pilot was okay. I did not sit with the pilot. The instructor sat he sat where the co-pilot was sit. We took a flight around, that was it. That was our training. Now, the pilot had a whole 2 months of B-24 flying before he joined us, before we joined him, but he was well trained. Then we went on local bombing missions. In California, they had a big field that they picked out, and they do targets on the ground. And when they were coming in around 12,000 feet, they told us story, and all of a sudden the pilot sort of collapses. His oxygen wasn't working, and he gets air hunger, oxygen deprived. And so I'm flying the plane now, so I just pulled the throttles back, and we settled down. We got down about 8,000 feet, and he come around. That's the only time I ever felt really valuable in that aircraft, I did most of the landings, but I never took the airplane off. The pilot took that, and the commander did that. What did I do? I sat there in the airplane. I monitored the gauges to be sure that temperatures were all right. I could adjust the temperatures and the engines. On takeoff, you generate a lot of heat, so you have to back off on the temperatures. Do that by letting air into the engines. I sat there bleeding blood. Is it going to take off okay? That was the danger, big danger, and the B-24 was going to take off. Because if you got up about 10 foot and lose an engine, you're all done. We had extra fuel tanks, heavy weight, and we staggered to get off the ground. The B-17, of course, the dandy of the air. Everybody was in love with the B-17, but our ship could carry heavy load forever. 14 hours in the air with the bombs, it's just amazing. No, I had no problem with the B-24. I thought it was an excellent plane. Ugly, big husky plane, but everything. We had 10 crewmen in each airplane, had all kinds of machine guns, 2 tail gunners, 2 waist gunners, not gunners, but guns. Top turret, bottom turret, front nose turret, all kinds of, throwing a hell of a lot of lead. We shipped up to San Francisco to go overseas, and we sat there week after week, it seemed like, and Joe DiMaggio and people like that came through. They're all going to go out and help the service. We wanted to go too, you know, but they didn't get around to sending us for a long period of time. And so when they did finally decide, why, they announced in the base, card drove around, Lieutenant Rayner, Lieutenant McLean, Lieutenant this and that, one giving the call, but everybody's gone. We're out of the base. And the next day they come and grab us by the ear and they court-martialed. I was court-martialed. Meant I was fined 1/2 month's pay at that point because I wasn't on base when they did. So the next day, boy, they got us out of there in a hurry. Spent a couple months in White Islands with the crew doing practice gunnery and practice bombing missions and that sort of thing. I was a medical doctor on the airplane. I'm no doctor, but I had to show how to start an IV. We carried blood along and fluids, saline, and we could use if somebody got hurt. Nobody got hurt on our plane.
Ralph Rayner will explain his various Pacific deployments and associated combat stories.
Saipan, Guam, Okinawa were the 3 islands that we took off of. Saipan was first. We were shipped to Saipan, a couple thousand miles away. Saipan was a dusty, miserable island. And we flew missions out of Saipan, and our quarters were up on the top of a hill somewhere. One Christmas night, 1944, we were bombed. We were on Saipan, and they bombed. The Japanese sent some planes in to bomb, and they had 1 B-29 that night. All the hell broke loose. Flak going, our gunners shooting everything in the air. At 20 minutes, it's all over. The next day, all the crewmen are out digging holes in the ground. That was our honey, that B-29. Everything was set up to protect the B-29s. The B-29 was a wonderful plane, but they had a lot of problems with it, mechanical problems. Toward the end of the war, they had ironed them out and the plane was flying okay. Then they shipped us down to Guam. We had wonderful quarters in Guam, beautiful little tent things, and up off the ground and coconut trees outside. That was good duty. And we had the officers had our own mess, and we had a man that tended the mess, cleaned up. We lived high-fi. We're big officers. that was fun then. Guam was a nice spot. Big island, 120 miles south of Saipan. So it was another little distance to fly, but I enjoyed Guam. We had a ball club. We had a doctor who was into helping us with things. Liked us, so food was lousy. Canned Spam. No fresh meat. And no milk, no ice cream. One day the squadron commander made a deal with the Seabees. The Seabees had everything because they take the island over. They had ice machines, so he made us deal that we had whiskey. We had whiskey, so we traded whiskey for 30 gallons of ice cream. Everybody got a good scoop of ice cream. The one thing I missed was dairy products. I missed milk and ice cream, cheese and things like that. Otherwise, I thought the diet was adequate and the bread was wonderful. The service did everything they could to take care of us. Had a full hospital privileges. Our flight had its own physician. Again, I can't say too much of the effort that they did to feed us, to take care of us medically, clothe us, protect us. It was a good life. Most of the missions we flew around 15,000 feet. We had a couple missions we went up to 28,000 in a B-24, and it was struggling to get that altitude. But most of them are around 15,000. We went on oxygen at 10,000. Everybody in the plane would go on oxygen mask at 10,000 feet. Some of the missions were 15 hours. It's a long time, 14, 15 hours in that damn airplane. And sitting in that damn airplane for that length of time was, you're young, you don't mind it. But they were long missions. Once or twice we carried a small bomb, a scatter bomb, but most of them 500 pounds, and we carry, if I remember right, we carry about 26 of them, 13,000 pounds of bombs. And they load those babies the night before a mission. They had a special sling that could lift that 500-pound bomb up in the bomb bay. Most of our targets were airfields. We didn't bomb residential areas. We didn't care about their houses. The big mission was Iwo Jima. We flew every other day to Iwo Jima because they're getting ready to take Iwo Jima. The day when they landed, we could see the little boats downstairs, down the ocean, going in with the soldiers to start the big battle. But that morning, it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and they never saw such a collection of battleships and supply ships sitting down there for the big battle. After a mission, they would meet us at the airport, at the landing strip, in trucks, and take us up to debriefing. And you said, and they'd ask you questions like, well, what was it like? Did you see any fighters? What was the ack like? What was the weather like? You give them as much information as you could. Then they'd feed you. Usually have a special meal. Chichi-Jima is north of Iwo Jima, about 120 miles. Iwo Jima was the big battle, but Chichi-Jima was just offhand. So we bombed that, Chichi-Jima, and one day we got quite a bit of opposition there. Fighter aircraft and ack and that sort of thing. They came down through the formation, but they just disappeared. They didn't even know what was happening. All of a sudden you hear it, boom, and the plane jumped, boom, and then nothing. The next day I found out this hole in the airplane was about 14 inches from my right foot. And that's the one that took out the hydraulic system. But that was a lucky shot. Lucky for both of us. Didn't hit any, didn't hurt anybody. The airplane flew. That B-24 would fly forever. It was a tough airplane. And the B-24 was a hydraulic plane. The B-17, by the way, was all electric motor. The hydraulic system put the wheels down, put the flaps down, with brakes, so we had no brakes. We had cranked to crank the wheels down, and we cranked the flaps down. And then to brake the airplane, it's a great big heavy airplane, rolled forever. It was a big heavy thing. We tied parachutes to the gun mounts in the waist, and I pushed the whistle when we touched down, and they threw out these parachutes, and they brought the airplane to a stop in the ditch. I had read about it somewhere in England. Some guy lost his brakes, and he tossed his parachute. I thought, well, yeah, we can do that. So we just tied the parachutes to the gun mounts in the waist, and I had a little buzzer, and I pushed the buzzer when it was the right time, and they threw the parachutes out. But I knew that was my show. That's why you read everything you can, and you learn things. The B-24 touched down at 110 miles an hour. At 110 miles an hour without brakes, you go from here to New Jersey. It would go forever, you know. So the parachutes popped out on both sides, and that worked out beautifully. One mission in particular, for some reason or other, we were running out of gas. We had a special tanks put in and it was a mission to Chichi-Jima. The indicator says it's about gone of gasoline. So we were either going to have to land in the water or parachute, but we got back and they gave us special admission to come in ahead of all other flights And we landed, and we had about 10 minutes of gasoline left. That flight scared me more than any other flight, because I didn't want to land in the water. I was frightened. Otherwise, I wasn't frightened. Every bombing mission that we went on, following us up there and back, was Dumbo. Dumbo was an American Navy flying boat that supposedly would land and pick you up. One day about Marcus, one of the ships lost its ability to feather the prop. They feather the prop by turning it into the wind. But if you didn't do that, it kept winding. And tremendous resistance, just bringing the ship down. So the commander of the airplane said, "What'll I do?" And the commander of the flight said, "Bail your men out, and Dumbo will pick you up." So he bails 11 men out, 10 men out, down in the water, and they land in the water. Dumbo comes down, starts to land, and takes off. Doesn't stop, doesn't pick anybody up. These poor bastards are sitting there in the water all night long. Little fish come up and bite their feet. It's kind of chilly, and that floating in that water. The next morning, off in the distance, is 6 Dumbos doing a search, a planned search, looking for these guys. And all of a sudden, up out of the water comes a submarine. It's an American submarine, and he's heard all this talk going on. What he was doing was circling Marcus, the islands they had been bombing. So he got permission to leave that and go down where these guys had bailed out. So he picks them all up, and these guys now have about 10 days in that submarine eating ice cream and fresh meat and had a good life. So then after he went back to Marcus, continued his mission around Marcus, and then later on came down to Guam and let them off the ship. And one of the biggest things about that whole thing was our submarines. They did havoc in the Japanese Navy, sinking supply ships and that sort of thing. When we got to Okinawa, we flew free every other day. See, they had to prepare the airplane, put the bombs in, check all the instruments and everything. So every other day we'd fly a mission. We went to China, two missions to China, and then day after day to Japan itself. And we're on Nagasaki, and we're approaching, this is before the bomb was dropped, and we're cruising about a northeast part of we're going to hit the northeast part of the Nagasaki, big city. And all of a sudden up ahead, a B-24 went straight up in the air, turned over, and down he went, all the way down. And I was sitting there, and I could watch him all the way down. All of a sudden, we see this burst of flame and smoke, and he never got on. I wonder what brought that plane down, because we had no other aircraft, and no fighter, no opposition at that time, and there was no ack-ack. It was quiet. Something like that. Called that maybe to go up and down. One night, we had a special mission up to Japan. So we took off about 9 o'clock at night and flew up to Japan and up the coast, up and around. It was sort of a harassing mission, I suppose. Call the Japanese, keep them awake, so they didn't sleep. Then a little bit later, another plane took off, lost an engine on takeoff, went into the tropics, down into the woods, and everybody was killed. Sad day. Killed except one guy got out. I remember that was tragic. I went to their funeral. They packed us all up to go up to the funeral, dig a hole in the ground. One night, we had a movie, by the way. Almost every night we'd have a movie sitting on the side of a hill. Seats were a box. You sit in the box, watch this movie, and we'd have the news at night. Michigan just beat Ohio State, or Notre Dame did this, and it'd be in local news. The war in Europe was over by this time. And then there was a silence, and then this guy says, Tokyo Rose has just announced that Japan is suing for peace. Well, that was no movie that night. The island just exploded. Everybody shooting guns off. Some of those guys have been over there for 4 or 5 years, and now they're going to get to go home. So that night there was no movie. Then the funniest mission was the war was ended. Tokyo Road says, we're not going to come, it's all over. We then loaded up bombs, everything, to China. We fly up to China. We don't bomb them. We just cruise up and down the coast, teasing them. Are you going to come out and attack us? If you are, then the war's, you're all talk. But there was anything, the war is truly over. That was in August of 1945. Then there we sit. The war is now over. How are we going to get home? They were anxious to get us over there, but not particularly anxious to get us home. So they're going to fly us down to Manila. And they had a hurricane just the night before. And the hurricane came through Okinawa, blew tents down and howled. Next morning we get up and it's all quiet. We go up and the airplanes are okay. So we get on a transport and flies us down to Manila. And we sit there for 2 or 3 weeks waiting for a boat. And that was kind of fun. War's over. Food was really decent. One day, I'm in the tent, and this lady comes along and she takes my clothing to wash. And she says, I'll be back 2 days. 2 days go by, and here she comes. But now she's got the family with 6 kids with her, husband, boyfriend, whatever. And they're standing at the tent, pointing to my, look, see. You know what they were looking at? Never tell you, my red hair. Filipinos do have no red hair. They're all black. But here's this funny-looking guy with bright red hair. And that was a happy day for them. Well, that was the end of the combat. To bring us home, they shipped us by the USS Robin Wentley, was the name of the ship that came back. Was loaded with soldiers. They fed us twice a day, morning and afternoon, late afternoon. And we listened to music. Everybody was happy. Come home. Made it intact. You know, good feeling. The ship took 3 weeks to get back. And finally we got back and we came through the Golden Gate Bridge and there it was up on the hill. Welcome home. Job well done. The ship pulled in to San Francisco now. Pulled up to the dock, dropped anchor, and that was it. We didn't get off the ship at nighttime. You could hear the horns, the cars honking and music and everything. And on the damn ship were all these guys that had been over there for 4 years, and we couldn't go on, couldn't get off. We didn't get off the ship till the next morning. That was a difficult time for a lot of big guys. Not me. I hadn't been over there that long. I think I've been on there about 8, 9 months. I joined the reserve. And I flew reserve about 2 years, maybe 3. And I decided I couldn't do this any longer because family's starting to come. And there's a certain danger in flying and no money, so I bailed out of the reserve. But I flew reserve for 2 or 3 years after the war. That's the thing. I really thank the people of this country and what they did in that war.
After Ralph Rayner stopped flying, he became a physician and later a general surgeon serving Red Wing, Minnesota. Having grown up in grinding poverty during the Great Depression, he attributed his success to hard work and public education. He briefly served in the U.S. Air Force as a doctor at Luke Air Force Base in the 1980s and was married to Louise Jane Gibson for 55 years until she passed away in 2001. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out our playlist on the end screen for more important interviews.